This is a session on engaging employers in high school work-based learning opportunities. I'm Julie Lammers, Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Corporate Social Responsibility for American Student Assistance. And ASA is a national nonprofit changing the way students learn about careers and navigate a path to education and career success. So with us today are some wonderful panelists that are going to talk about this really important topic, how do we expand opportunity in work-based learning for students. We've got Jason Tishko, Vice President of the Center for Education and Workforce at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Stephanie Reiser, President and CEO of GPS Education Partners. And Corey Mon, President and CEO of the CAPS Network. So, ASA really prioritizes work-based learning and the work that we do. We think it's really important to ensure that students have the ability to test and try what they might like in a career, start to build some technical and interpersonal skills, and really provide them a pathway to the workforce. We find they're very excited next door.
Okay, that's your cue to clap really loud. 3, 2, 1.
Excellent. And so, some work from ASA, a recent study we had found that while 79% of high school students were really interested in a work-based learning experience, only about 34% of them knew of available opportunities for kids their age, and only 2% had actually completed them. So it sort of sends us down the path of how do we ensure greater opportunity for this one. We have, there's this tension that we have found between the education and workforce sectors to try to build these types of opportunities. Lots of reasons for employers to say no, liability concerns, transportation issues, scheduling challenges for employers. Lots of reasons that make it really difficult to work in some of the systems. I was recently on a call with someone at the Department of Education that described to her working with the education sector for a business was like being nibbled slowly step by a goldfish. There are lots of continuous requests for things, and it became very, very hard over time to make that system work. So we have 3 great speakers here with us today that have made great strides in figuring out how do we make this partnership between education and the workforce and business work really well. So let's start with telling us a little bit about all of your models. Jason, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the work that you are doing now to launch a new program around project-based learning.
Thank you, Julie. And hello, everyone. My name is Jason Tishko with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. For those of you who might not know, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the world's largest business federation. We represent over 1,500 state and local chambers of commerce, collectively reach over 3 million firms. Today I'm speaking with you on behalf of the foundation side of the house, which is our nonprofit affiliate. So if the U.S. Chamber is more Capitol Hill facing, the foundation is more field facing. And that's where we have our Center for Education and Workforce, which is really looking at ways we might be able to solve some of our most pressing workforce challenges by really elevating employer leadership. So our theory of change is if you get the business community organized and effectively leading, it results in better pathways and opportunities for the learners and workers who are the ultimate beneficiaries of those partnerships. So we have a pretty broad and expansive portfolio, but we're kind of focused around 4 pillars. One around partnerships with employers, another one around modernizing our workforce data, another one on how we finance the education workforce system, and finally, how we improve quality. And we're excited to be partnering with ASA now, really around that partnership layer, to figure out how we can develop new models that can scale to really help bring more work-based learning opportunities to youth and other learners. And kind of our longest running and most successful workforce initiative to date has been our Talent Pipeline Management Initiative, TPM for short. And that's all about applying lessons learned, methodologies, and tools from supply chain management to human capital systems. And that's not to say people are widgets or schools or factories, but if you get employers thinking more as an end customer of the talent supply chain, they understand how they need to perform differently in that partnership. They're no longer there with an opinion or as an advisor, but they're there to activate a shared value proposition for the entire value stream they're creating. So they understand the value of data, how to provide continuous feedback to your partners, how to share in the accountability of the end result. So they're bought in, and the stakes are much higher, and they understand this is about an ROI-driven partnership. It's not about just corporate social responsibility, though there is always an element of that. As we've been doing that work now for a number of years, and it's really scaled across the country, we're in 44 states in Canada right now, we're rapidly growing. We've been building these employer-led talent supply chains, and as part of these value streams we're creating, work-based learning plays a pretty fundamental role. So it's being integrated as one way of doing like a performance demonstration, where students can demonstrate to the employer that they're actually attaining the skills that most given the need, and that they're developing those networks earlier on in the pipeline, so the employers know who these learners are on the front end of the pipeline, not on the back end, when they're looking for a job. But we've run into some problems. And one of those issues, as I'm sure probably most people in this audience have encountered, is it's really difficult to scale and build the capacity necessary to support all the work-based learning opportunities that can be out there. And it's quite a burden on the private sector partners to try to offer internships or other work-based learning opportunities when they simply don't have the capacity given the potential volume that's within that pipeline. There's other challenges, of course, too, which is quality. How are we making sure that there is some consistent, standardized quality around those experiences so we can trust that even though a learner went to one employer versus another, the experience was quality, and the employer understands what it means for someone to have completed that experience, even if it wasn't completed with them. The list can go on, but I'm sure others want to talk to you. But one of the things we're trying to tackle now as part of this larger body of work is how to scale high-quality work-based learning that speaks to employers. So we reached out to Julie, we're partnering at the ASA now on a new program that's going to very much be integrated into that talent supply chain work, but is going to also sit outside as a standalone initiative. We call it EPIC. It stands for Employer Provided Innovation Challenges. And the goal here is to work, much like we have with our federation around the talent supply chain, to build capacity within state and local business associations to become challenge clearinghouses. We think we can reach more learners more effectively through high-quality, employer-led project-based learning. So we really want to create an infrastructure, nationally if not globally, where employers can be trained up on how to design and disseminate high-quality project-based learning challenges that are based on real-world, messy problems, where cross-functional, interdisciplinary teams of learners can coalesce around those challenges and actually demonstrate to the employers what they're able to do as a member of a team to solve a real-world problem like they're going to be asked to do once they actually start looking for a job opportunity or a place-based work-based learning opportunity. So I'll share more about this later, but kind of one of the big goals is if we're successful in building this infrastructure, can we rapidly move to have 100 business associations offering 10 or more challenges a year, reaching 10,000 students or more. So we have a lot of work to do, but we want to see this capacity and kind of create a franchise model, but we all know that it's going to be high-quality project-based learning, it's going to be authentically employer-led, and we want to make sure that learners who complete those experiences are credentialed in a way that has currency in today's labor market. So thank you for the opportunity to share some about this program and partnership.
Yep, thanks. We're really excited about this work and what comes of it. So Stephanie, let's turn to you. A very different model, GPS EDU, and really sprung from an employer need that you saw in the state of Wisconsin. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, kind of a grassroots model. So I spent 16 years as a HR. So I'm a recovering HR executive. But we ended up understanding that as young people were coming to our doorstep, ill-prepared for work, ill-prepared with the skills that they needed, there was a responsibility that us as an employer had within Generac to be able to say, okay, we have to be part of the solution, not just whining about the problem. And so in 2000, we started to do something about it and basically flip the model to create an employer-led work-based learning model that actually brought students within our workplace, not only for their workplace experiences, but also for their education. And so they were in real world, integrated into their daily education. But we realized that about 5 years ago, that wasn't enough to just take juniors and seniors, put them in youth apprenticeship, immersive work-based learning, and then help them navigate to what's next in their career. But instead, we needed to start a lot earlier. So about 5 years ago, we created and built out a full work-based learning journey. So very similar to take on some of that project-based learning, some of that early awareness, and really be able to connect that learning all the way through the journey, through obviously work-based learning, through internships, apprenticeships, et cetera. So now we actually are working as an intermediary to provide the services to scale work-based learning. Our goal is the same as ASA's, to make sure that every young person has the opportunity to have a work-based learning experience before they graduate high school, right? So they have a pathway, they understand, what's my plan, what's my purpose, and they've got the self-confidence to succeed in what's next in that. And they have a lot of off-ramps to be able to do that. And so now what we do is we've taken that 20 plus years of experience. We still run our Cornerstone program in Wisconsin. We have over 200 students that go through that program every year. We have 100 business partners, 50 different school districts that we manage that. But now we're saying we want to help, as an intermediary in multiple states, actually design, develop, and help implement work-based learning solutions kind of across states. So that's what we're doing now, here to help that efforting to continue moving that forward. So all of the folks on the panel too, we connect with all of these different folks to make sure that we're connecting those dots for educators, obviously for employers, and entire communities, because we know this work gets executed at the local level, but we need to scale it at the national level, and we're here to help.
Excellent, thank you, Stephanie. And that segues perfectly to our last panelist. So talk a little bit, Corey, about the CAPS network, because as you say, it is very local, right? It is hyper-local, but you are expanding nationally through your network affiliates.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me start by asking you all a question out in the audience. How many of you keep a to-do list? How many of you have a 10th thing on your to-do list that never gets off your list? Okay. Yeah, most of you, right? If not all of you, I might say. Some of you may not be telling the truth if you say you don't have it. 10th thing on the to-do list is that we ask that question to our employers around our school programs that affiliate with CAPS, which is a profession-based learning model for high school students. We ask that question because that makes for a perfect, authentic project for high school students. So the CAPS network is a model that started in the Kansas City area 15 years ago in a single public school district there, Blue Valley School District, but has since expanded and become a nonprofit to allow other schools, other school districts to partner and lift up their own local version of this model based on our framework and a connection through our core values. And the bread and butter of the model, which makes it highly flexible and I think allows us to meet more students, to Jason's point about how challenging it can be to try to get every student in an internship or an apprenticeship, is to work through these authentic client projects. Think of it as students as consultants to your business and nonprofit communities or startup entrepreneurs in your community. And we believe that we can scale a model that's highly relational, that is locally empowered, and has fidelity around the experiences that the students are getting from these employers. It's super exciting. Julie, to your point, we have grown significantly. So 7 years ago, when I had the great joy of being hired in to serve as the executive director of the Blue Valley CAPS program, we had 5 experimental partners, 6 school districts connected to this effort. We currently have 95 affiliates operating in 23 states and 4 countries. So it's moving quickly. I'm trying to keep my sanity through that, but it's extremely exciting because it's very purpose-driven, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation because there's a lot of synergy in the work that's happening here.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Corey, I'm going to stick with you for a second, and then ask Stephanie and Jason to respond to this as well. The challenge that a lot of districts have, or work-based learning providers have, is engaging employers, right? It is a huge challenge to not just have the setup correct in a school district or a community-based organization, but how do you appropriately engage with the employer so you're not nibbling them to death like you should, right? So my question to you is, what is your value proposition to employers to get them to say, yes, this is something I'm willing to participate in, commit resources to, and really sort of go along this journey with you? Because it can be a challenge, and that's usually the place where this opportunity breaks down, is that connection between business and the school systems.
Absolutely. No, it's a great question, and I'll quickly give you the kind of the bulleted answer, and then I'm going to fill in some detail because some of it won't make sense to you until I do. So it's recruitment, it's retention, it's branding, and it's true return on investment.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on some of that. We had some of our employers that at first, they, at the highest level, said, yes, we know this is something we need to do. We have a talent pipeline shortage. HR came in and said, you will do this from an operations perspective. And of course, the grumbling from the 30, 40-year-old year employees was, I'm not going to go and babysit a kid, right? Fast forward 3 months later-ish, HR came back to me and said, Stephanie, I just have to say, I think you've done more for us than we've done for your students. There would be mutiny right now if we took this program out of our shop floor, because these 30-year veterans have adopted these students. They have now purpose for the work that they come for every single day. They understand now that they're transferring that knowledge to these young people, and they have new purpose for their jobs as well. And so definitely, and there's also a couple of our scenarios for our students as well, that the value that those students actually add is surprising to many of our employers in that sense, right? Because they say, well, what's a kid gonna do? All right, fine, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. No, these are real jobs that these students are in, adding real value, to the point where by the time one of our students was in the workplace for less than 6 months, they became a lead. And they were training other people, or other new employees, on the floor. So I think, we're advancing where employers are saying, I have to be investors of talent, not just buyers of talent. And what does that mean for me? I have to, from a marketing perspective, right? I have to tell these young people the types of careers that are out there, because otherwise they won't even know they exist, right? And so employers understand they have a role in that. And they also understand from a cost perspective that recruitment and retention also cost money, right? So investing in the future talent, investing in their workforce is an investment that has a strong return as well. And one other thing I would just say to schools, I think, it's that, they feel like they're just getting bitten, piece by piece by piece, right? Bring your employers in as partners. It's easy to ask, right? You ask for something, you ask for this, you ask for stuff, you ask for a little funding for this, you ask for equipment, you ask for a tour, Bring them around the table, right? Have them as part of your strategic partner, and you're gonna get a lot further with not only that perception of investment, but also the buy-in, more than just short-term or long-term.
That's great. So Jason, turn to you on that point. That idea of partnership with employers and the fact that they now actively, much more than ever, want to be engaged in how do we collectively solve a problem around workforce development. What are you seeing has shifted? Are you seeing sort of the same employers step up over and over again? Or is there a broadening of understanding that this is a need that all of us need to collectively engage in, that it can't just be left to a school system to solve the problem? We need to sort of step up and all do it together.
Yeah, and I'll just say ditto to everything Stephanie already said, so I'll try not to repeat those points. But, and I might be telling you something you already know, but it's in today's environment, workforce is the #1 challenge on the minds of companies. If you were to talk to our membership, it's easily #1. And it's there to stay for a while. So we have tremendous talent shortages. We have systems that aren't working that can deliver talent on time, meeting the right requirements. So we've gotten the memo.
Yeah.
We're suffering it every day. So I think you are seeing more active employer engagement and leadership here because they are wanting to try to lean into a solution. I think you can see that through our larger workforce portfolio, where we have more and more companies signing up for our talent supply chain work because they realize I can't just rely on the spot market to find talent. I need to actually build a solution to meet my company's needs or my industry's needs. I can't just be a free rider in the system and expect the talent to be there when I need it. So I think you're starting to see it, but the problem we have is there isn't really a lot of infrastructure in place to scale it just given the size of the need.
Right,
That's
so
all.
it's
a
an
big country.
individual solution for every employer, right? That's
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
So we're trying to create more collective action movements within employers and create a shared infrastructure and solution. And we've been experimenting with that with health supply chain, where not every company has to go build their own, but just to give you an example, one of our partners is the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. And when they first learned our system, they went from kind of doing the traditional chamber thing of hosting a workforce breakfast that you sell tickets to, or showing up on advisory boards, or being part of grant competitions, and they did it well. But now they have this other tool in their toolbox, and by using the TPM system, they now have 5 employer collaboratives that reach probably over 200 employers. So we train at the Phoenix Chamber, they could activate over 200 employer partnerships locally. They're a trusted organization. Companies are paying dues to them and expect value, so they're responsive. Now, imagine that all over the country. And I think we're trying to do the same thing like here with work-based learning, is to say, yes, there is and let me back up into that, like what the value proposition is, because recruitment, retention, all that fun stuff. But the one thing I'll impress upon those of you who are in the education space is, and I'm going to speak in oversimplification, so consider this me just being provocative. But for a lot of times, like I've encountered folks more on what I would call the supply side versus with the demand side, coming at it saying, I have a problem to solve, which is I need X number of internship opportunities, or I need employers wanting this credential or assessment, and they kind of go to the private sector with that ask. And it's more kind of like, solve my problem for me. And I encourage you to flip your thinking, because for a lot of companies, they might not want to solve that problem for you because it's not their job. Now, some of them may have that kind of corporate citizenship angle to it. That's a good thing. You want to lean into that, but you really have to speak to their enlightened self-interest. And they come at it and say, I'm not just trying to fill seats, like work-based learning seats, but I need work-based learning to be part of a more comprehensive solution set for your workforce needs. So how do I come in here and connect these dots? Because we don't want to come across as a pushing product.
Right.
Like, trust me, this internship, we just came up with it, it's going to solve all your problems, and guess what? The students are going to be looking for their jobs in 5 years or something. So companies are thinking immediately, like, I need someone yesterday, how is this fitting in with my problem now? So really kind of spending the time to build those relationships and to be able to identify how work-based learning is a critical component to a larger solution set that you can help them with, that can involve career and technical education and other pathways, is really important. So you want to not oversell it, but contextualize it in an important way. And just the last point I'll make around kind of what we're trying to do around EPIC with ASA is make it easy for the companies. A lot of them want to do it, but they want it to be as easy as possible. And what we've tried to do with the talent supply chain work, and now what we want to do with the EPIC work, is really make it easy and achieve economies of scale through a shared infrastructure. If there's more consistent, standardized training around how to do high-quality project-based learning, and there's a plug-and-play infrastructure where you don't have to build everything and start over, but you just plug into a larger ecosystem, that makes the ask so much more, it's just an easier ask for the companies, because you've lowered the barrier to entry. And if you make it easy, make it fun, these projects can be a lot of fun. Much like doing the outsourcing consulting stuff, it could really engage students in a powerful way. I might not know these 10 companies from a hole in the wall, but that problem that keeps them up at night, I like to solve things like that. Now I want to get to know them. So make it easy, tie it to their larger workforce value proposition, and that's just some of the ways that I think we can address the value proposition question.
Yeah, so can you tell them, like, so last week, it's a couple of things to point out here, and what I love about the work that the U.S. Chamber Foundation and Jason are doing, and separate with ASA, around challenge-based activities, is when you think about engaging with employers, oftentimes as educators, it can feel intimidating. Like, how in the world am I going to create an opportunity for not just a few students, but like a classroom of students or a school of students? And what does it mean to, like I mentioned this crazy project that was done up in Minnesota. It was, the company was Best Buy. You probably figured that out. But, how do I create that for all of my students? Well, it doesn't have to, you don't have to bite the whole apple off, right? It can be a challenge-based activity that occurs over a day. And I just wanted to share, I was telling Jason this earlier, last week we had one of our it was a global engineering company that's in Kansas City, offered to host. We had 4 local entrepreneurs that showed up, and we did a reverse pitch. So students showed up, 100 students from 8 different CAPS programs, integrated into teams where they knew no one else on the team. They got to meet people from different parts of the community, everywhere from an hour and a half north of Kansas City in a rural district to the heart of Kansas City in a more urban area and suburban, all mixed together, and they had one entrepreneur that said, this is my challenge, I need help. And then they spent the days helping to give them guidance and to help them solve the problem or to make progress on the problem. And when you finish the event and an entrepreneur comes up to you and says, I need the names of the students that all worked and pitched to me because I'm gonna write a white paper for the insurance industry about the insights and I want them to be listed as basically the ones that provided the input. That's powerful. And that only was one day. And for those entrepreneurs, they had to commit one day at a time.
That's a great, really great example. Stephanie, Corey as well, I think one of the things that Jason points out is this, making it simple. Now, making it simple is not always simple, in and of itself, right? There are significant structural barriers to on-site internships in particular. Insurance challenges, transportation, liability, a whole host of issues, a whole host of reasons why it is easy for employers to say, this is just too much for me to take on. How have you successfully navigated some of those things? Because some of them require policy change in order to make it work effectively, and if not, at least
We're a little creative, right?
Right.
I think in some cases, like anything, helping them get out of their own way. I think, in some cases, it's easier to say no first than sit down as a partner to figure it out, right? And I think in some cases, we actually sat down with a coalition of partners, right? We walked the floors, we help understand with them what student, training really can do, right? What these students can do on the shop floor, what they're capable of doing. And I think, some of that is, there are legal concerns. I mean, you have to get past some of that, but I think helping bring some of that expertise and knowledge back to them to say, this doesn't have to be a barrier. Yes, these young people can do these things, within your work environment. Let me show you how. And we walk through with them on that. And when you work with them as a coalition of partners, they really do start problem solving within, especially at that local level as well.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One would be, I think, keeping your mindset open around, like you said, how you communicate and engage. But I would also say, think about offering a menu of options for how students could connect to the industry partner. Some industry partners will say, we're all in on internships or apprenticeships, and they're ready to roll. They want to go to that level of depth right out of the gate. Others you're gonna need to kind of walk them through a process, right? It might be, come serve as a mentor. Start with one day a month where you show up and you're in the space, and that helps transform our space and helps our students feel like young professionals. I love the idea of the client-connected project, because for an employer who feels like it might be a burden to have to manage a young person for 3 or 4 days a week, it's really appealing to say, let me hand you something off my to-do list. I will answer your questions. I'll check in with you every couple of weeks, but otherwise, you're gonna go do that work with a little bit of support from your teacher kind of as a backstop. But then you'll be bringing me that value, much like a consultant, right? So I think that's something to think through. The other thing I would say is when you do have an opportunity for like full-blown internships, sometimes, as you say, you have to get creative. So I'll give you another story. We have a CAPS program down in Bentonville, Arkansas. And of course, we know Bentonville is the home of Walmart, right? So in Bentonville Night program, trying to figure out how to form a partnership and to get some students great access and experience. And in the process, it was hitting all of the places you would think it got stuck. HR, legal, facilities, right? All of my favorite departments. And as an entrepreneur. And so anyway, what it took, quite honestly, to kind of unlock the opportunity was to have an existing industry partner, corporate industry partner, who had already gone through that work to figure it out in their spots, to have a conversation directly with the attorney at Walmart that was kind of the one supporting this opportunity. And now we have tech students that are CAPS students, part of Bentonville Ignite. They report to the global tech headquarters in the spring. They badge in. I can't get through the way they do. They just walk right in there. Boop, it's like their employees there. I show up and they, it's like they want to throw me against the wall, because I'm a security threat. So awesome experiences, but sometimes you have to leverage other people in the ecosystem that have been down the road to help.
Right, and that is hugely helpful.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know it was intended for me, but I wanted to jump in on the kind of the structural barriers. When I talk about employer-led project-based learning, it's not a silver bullet. There's one more tool in the toolbox, but what I think it can help address is access. And before I was with the U.S. Chamber, I actually worked for state government in Illinois. We did kind of a microcosm of this for our Department of Commerce of all places. And I remember we were trying to get some companies to kind of experiment with this kind of project-based learning, and we had a large biopharma company that was providing internships, but they were 5 or 10 internships a year on a good year. And we said, look, keep doing that, but would you be willing to do a challenge to potentially reach 50 or more students? And they were like, well, how would that work? And explain and say, look, these students don't need to come on site. You can still do that with students that you want to work with that are in the local area, but you could actually work with school districts far outside of your region on a challenge where you could have multiple teams working on the same challenge. They are very excited about that kind of opportunity. We also had another school district that really embraced this approach. And I thought it was crazy what they were proposing to do, but they worked with a company and took a challenge, and they actually had every student in that entire high school participate in that challenge. They organized multiple teams across grade level to do it, but it was one challenge for the entire school. So when you start dealing with these more simulated experiences like project-based learning, you can reach a lot more students, and it gets around some of the structural barriers around transportation and access. So that company could have been working with 5 to 10 students a year, but now through project-based learning, could have the ability to reach hundreds of students a year without necessarily putting in as much bandwidth on their end in terms of the needing to provide all that physical access to the infrastructure, the supervision that comes along with it. So it's not a replacement, but it's highly complementary, and it can really help disrupt some of these traditional structural barriers to workplace learning.
That's great. Well, and it takes out that mindset too, right? That some of this initial programming then says, okay, I've done that. Now maybe I can take the next step and bring them in for an apprenticeship, for an internship. I think I can do this now, right? So it builds that confidence up.
Exactly. It could be part of that pipeline. And if you say it's your tool, so it's up to the local partners how they want to integrate it. Co-curricular, curricular.
Right.
You want it as an onboarding process to place-based experiences, or as a capstone project after those.
Right.
Total flexibility in
step.
how you want to apply it locally.
Right.
And something else that, in terms of access is thinking about students in rural settings. I mean, they really don't have a lot of access to companies, but if companies have an infrastructure to be able to farm out challenges that can reach rural students, that increases their reach into the talent pipeline.
You mentioned earlier, Jason, the ability to translate what is learned through this experience to employers. Curious for all of you, how do you help students articulate the skills that they've developed in a way that will be applicable to post-secondary education acceptance or a career potential employer? That ability to not only have the experience, but then express the knowledge gained, the skills learned in a way that is accepted by multiple parties is really difficult. I'm curious how you navigate that piece.
I'm happy to go. So, how many of you have heard about durable skills? Okay, so if you have not gone to durableskills.org, you need to. America Succeeds has organized a number of corporate partners, and there is a thing called the Durable Skills Wheel, which I am absolutely obsessed with, because it lists out and makes very visible all of the things that are the opposite of hard skills, the term that I would refuse to say out loud, because I do not believe in how it's, what it indicates about the importance of these skills. But we would call them X factor skills or power skills. They're really important. So in the CAPS model, we measure, every semester, we measure with our students their level of confidence around different intervals, and they're all connected to what we would call durable skills or professional skills. And actually, just to give you a sense, I pulled this up because I thought this would come up. So we had over 2,000 students take this survey. This was last fall. And we asked them before and after their experience how confident they were in certain elements that I would refer to as durable skills. Some of these just are insane, the level of growth that happens. And I'm not claiming it like CAPS is the be-all end-all. I'm saying if you can get students into authentic, real experiences, it doesn't matter what brand is on it, these things will happen, right? So when students were asked their level of career awareness, how confident were they that they had career awareness? When they entered the program, it was 14.5% of them said they were confident or very confident. When they left, 83%. How confident were they in professional communication? 14% before, 82% afterwards. Delivering an elevator pitch went from 12 to 68%.
That's still hard no matter what age you're in.
Yeah. Confident, so this is kind of the one that always gets me. Confidence in my ability to be successful in life. 36% before, 84% afterwards. These are the kinds of metrics we need to be shifting to, because these are the metrics that are going to matter. So check out Durable Skills, America Succeeds. We're happy to share more information about the metrics we track. And I think that's what we need to be kind of thinking about. That's what the employers are thinking.
Before you jump in, Stephanie, I'll just make a plug for the fact that there is a panel on this issue, and America Succeeds will be there. They're absolutely back in the room. Now, I believe it's right next, 2:30, 9 AB, so right next door. So you don't have to go very far to learn more about this important topic. So Stephanie, sorry.
No, absolutely. So I think much to that point, right, some of the most important pieces is really to get consistent, meaningful feedback to the students, and also consistent reflections, right? Both personally with the students, so after they have that, great experience that day or for that project or whatever it is, that they sit down and say, okay, what did I learn? What did I like? What did I not like? And then now what, right? How do we help them take that now what step and build upon that as well? And so we have 360, we have a 360 approach to it as well, that 2 to 4 times a year, we do 360s with all of the students. So they themselves, look at, okay, how did I do? What does this look like for me? What's my next step? And then so does their employer. And so there's that consistent feedback that they're getting in their growth, their understanding of who they are, what is it that they're really enjoying, what is it they want to do next, and how do I do that, right? And so to me, those are great things to say. Each one of these experiences that I have on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, need to have those types of individual reflections, but also that coaching and also that additional feedback.
This question around learner agency and their ability to effectively articulate, it's a big one. It's a can of worms. What we're talking about here is part of it, but we have a whole other part of our portfolio that's around data. Just saying, we're not even empowering learners with data about their learning outcomes in a transparent way that can actually help them go and apply for a job or for continuing education. I mean, right now we say, you have all these educational experiences, now open up a blank Microsoft Word document and pump out 2 pages to try to explain what you were able to do in a way that someone's going to make heads or tails of. Again, oversimplification. But, I mean, we're putting it, we can't even give them a competency-based transcript. So, there's a whole data problem. And we've got a lot of partners who are working on that, happy to talk to people about it. However, when it comes to this issue around work-based learning, what I've often, picture this, you have one student who kind of comes in and says, I've gone through my academic program, I got a good GPA, I was able to score an interview, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to explain what I think I know and need to do based upon my education pathway. Now you have another learner who comes in and says, I've gone through, done the same thing, gone through my course and stuff, oh, by the way, I participated in 2 or 3 employer challenges. Now this opens up a whole other conversation when applying for that job. Now the company says, tell me about that challenge. What role did you play? What part of the team were you? How did you deal with not having complete information? What happened when you guys hit a wall? How did you actually solve it for the company? Or what kind of ROI did you deliver for that company? You don't even have to be in an internship or a youth apprenticeship program. Just by having one of those experiences, it gives you a very powerful story to tell when trying to communicate with that outside stakeholder to to demonstrate to them the value you could potentially bring if you become a member of their team. So it's not that you even have to have all of those place-based experiences, because as we all probably know, there's a lot of place-based experiences that aren't very high quality, they're low quality. You're not really doing much. But to come in and say, I didn't even have to necessarily solve the challenge. Now it's different than what Corey's going with, because there's an actual like consultancy model going in there. There's a value proposition, but you can say, hey, here's a real world messy problem. It's not about solving it. It's about the experience. Tell me about your experience, what you learned, and how that experience could add value to my company and what we do. And just giving every student one of those experiences gives them a powerful story to tell that's above and beyond, this is what I think I learned at school.
And Jason, a lot of the students, and this is not just CAPS, but that's my lens where I see a lot of it. Students will tell you that have had these experiences, and it could be, you know, 1 or 2 challenges, it could be a client project. They will tell you when you ask them, well, how did your, you know, for those that are wanting to go to college or university, say, how did that, you know, process go for you? You opted out of, you know, your 5th and 6th and 7th AP courses to be a part of something like CAPS. How did that work for you? And then what they'll tell you is my college essays wrote themselves. Think about the questions that get asked on college essays and how easy it would be to answer if you had an authentic experience when times get tough, how to work with a team, when things get dysfunctional, you have to step up, right? They just write about their project. So, yeah, I'm double clicking on what you said. 100%.
One of the other pieces of work-based learning that we think is so critically important is not just the ability to build skills, but how you develop a social network that will make you be successful, help you be successful. We know that 50% of jobs still come through people you know. And so the ability to tap into that professional network when you need to is vitally important. And yet many young people don't understand, first of all, that that's the reality, how to appropriately map their social network and ask questions of adults in their life to help them get to the next place they need to be in their career. How do you deal with that social capital piece in the programs that you work with? Let's start.
So I'll start because we're actually about to launch a pilot that directly relates to that question. So as you can imagine, when your model is built on the idea of the school or the learning space as a community hub, where the curriculum is effectively a series of experiences connected to employers, whether they're for-profits or non-profits or startups, or clients like your own school district. I mean, think about your school district as an organization, how many projects, how many 10th thing on the to-do list do you think there are in your district office or in your administration for your school? So you can get really creative about the client project, but so there's kind of an embedded component of like making these connections with professionals. The question then becomes, how are we preparing the students to fully capture and optimize the ability to leverage those connections in meaningful ways? And of course, the resident expert in all this is Julia Freeland-Fisher, who's at the Christensen Institute, wrote the book, Who You Know. If you're not familiar with that, I would highly recommend you run out to Amazon or your local bookseller and find that one. So we're actually going to be working with Julia, the Christensen Institute, on a pilot project in the Kansas City area, which is where our CAPS network is headquartered. And we're going to work in a couple of school districts in the urban core of Kansas City around the idea of bringing in profession-based learning, so the CAPS model in our case, and then layering in guidance around how students can not only kind of understand how to reach out and cultivate new relationships, but starting with the idea of asset mapping who they already know. Students know a lot more folks in their community than they realize, and there's value there that they don't necessarily realize. So how do we help them figure out where they are currently, what's possible going forward in terms of their ability to capture and leverage relationships on the go forward, and simple things, I say simple things, for us as adults and professionals, things like create a LinkedIn profile, understand how to populate it effectively, understand how to communicate when you connect with someone. I mean, we have students in CAPS Network that all get on LinkedIn, and one of the little tricks, right? Like if you're going to try to connect to someone that you've met, put a little note in there when you ask to connect. Don't just do it blindly, especially if you're 16 or 17 or 18, because you may not get traction with it. So I think it's critically important. We're going to test kind of if we intentionally layer more of that information and what it looks like. But I think for your educators and your directors or administrators of programs, if you're moving into this challenge-based space or you want to do client-connected projects or profession-based learning, it's being intentional about working with the students and understanding that it's not just getting them ready and providing them with what they should know or what they currently know, or even how to learn, which is important, but it's also, let's prepare them for who they should know. That's been kind of a foreign concept in K-12. It's just not been there.
Right. Stephanie, how do you know?
Yeah, so, and I think it's also, helping them understand and how to capture some of that, because I don't think they even understand some of the people that they're next to within the internship or within, a lot of our students, they actually have fireside chats with the CEO, right? And they're developing a resume with this work experience, but it's also the people around them, right? It's the coach that they had, it's the mentor that they had, it's the supervisor that they worked with, so it's not only helping them understand that all of these people are captured, as part of their social network and something that they can use next, but also how do they put the best foot forward in making sure that the experience that they have with those people is a positive one too, right?
Did you continuously work with students to engage after the internship experience?
Yeah, so they build a portfolio of sorts, right? So they build a portfolio of their social network and how do they continue to connect. So they take that with them, right? And that becomes part of their resume. That becomes part of their tool. And so whatever is next, whether that be on a college application or whether that be in a position in a job, right? They're ready for that, and they're utilizing that network that's far broader than they thought it was in the first place.
We also need to measure this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we were just at the beginning of this process, so, give me a little grace, but we have started measuring as part of our confidence survey, specifically, what's your confidence around building a professional network? And you want to know what the opening number was? 11.9%. So about 1 in 10 students will tell you they're confident in their ability to build a professional network. 1 in 10. A lot of growth there, right? So in our numbers, it's a big delta, but the ending number I'd still like to get higher, but this is across 2,000 students. We did get it up to 66%. So that's a pretty good jump. But we can do better than that, right? We just have to start continuing to build the momentum around this and the awareness of its importance.
Right. Absolutely. Jason, how do you envision building that into the ethics program? It is virtual, right? So there will be less in-person one-on-one communication with employers, but it's still really important for that employer feedback and that employer connection. So just talk about that, please.
Yeah, just to back a little bit, one thing we learned in our larger workforce portfolio is the more you can connect people earlier in the pipeline, the better the outcome is on the back end. You don't want to save all that stuff for when somebody's about to enter into a job search. So building those touch points much earlier on in the process yields better benefits and better social capital. So we're trying to do the same thing now with work-based learning. And while we're hoping to have a shared infrastructure that's managed by technology for the project management component, not everything has to be done virtually. So we see this as actually being more of a hybrid model where there are going to be some challenges that are entirely virtual because they lend themselves to that or just because of just geography, it makes sense. But some might require an in-person component where there might need to be access to equipment. So we're going to just give folks the tools and then allow the local partnerships to really determine the rules of engagement. And I think some will be more virtual, some will be more of a hybrid type setup. But we want to create those touch points early. We want to credential those experiences. But I think that's something we need to put more thought into, is how do we really shore up those networking components of what we're doing? How do we make sure students aren't doing just one challenge, but have every opportunity locally to multiple challenges and kind of build a portfolio out? But then how do we also give them support so they are understanding the value of that networking component and actually investing some time in it? And I think that's a spot where we need to spend a little bit more time figuring that out.
And one piece that's interesting in alignment between both the CAPS model and the ethical challenge that you're building is opportunity for kids to work in cohorts with students they have no familiarity, right? It could be in EPIC that kids are working with kids in other states, right? If it's a virtual experience. In EPIC, as the example, or CAPS example of the entrepreneurship challenge, it was kids from all over the state that were working working together. On helping kids understand that network, right? And how do you lean on other team members? How do you begin to build a social network of your own, not just of your peers, not just professionals? It must be really, really important.
I completely agree. Can I throw in a funny tidbit? Everyone needs a laugh in the afternoon, right, after a long day of conferencing. So we had about, like I said, about 90 students at this challenge that we had. We've got another one coming up next month, which is going to be awesome. The CEO of a credit union in Kansas City is going to be on site. She's letting 100 high school students crash their headquarters, work from the headquarters, solving her challenges before her next board meeting. Like, really cool stuff, right? Like, empowering stuff. A little terrifying maybe for them. But we're at this last challenge, and we're printing off the name badges for the students that have registered to be a part of this. And I swear there's a mistake. We're about to leave the office for the day before and go to the Engineering World Headquarters where this is being hosted. And we see two of the same name, Alex Dean, with different schools. And I'm like, well, that's gotta be a mistake. So we double check, triple check. No, there are two Alex Deans spelled the same way. One is in Blue Valley School District, suburban district. The other one is the Center High School, which is South Kansas City, kind of closer to the center of the city. We get there on site. Alex Dean from Blue Valley is a 6'2" white male suburban student. A senior. Alex Dean from Center High School is a African-American female freshman. They couldn't have, and so anyway, they found each other at the end of the event and wanted to have a selfie together. Neither one of them had ever seen another Alex Dean before in their life that was spelled the same way. But no, it's powerful. These are things, and I will point you to the white paper that I'm going to post on LinkedIn, Jason. So you shared with me that Chamber did a white paper on this idea of challenge activities and how they could potentially scale. Jason was a co-author on it. And it made me, it got me really excited because there's sections in there that speak specifically to this idea of getting students from different backgrounds, different parts of a community or different parts of the country working together and how powerful that can be. And we've seen that, and we want to try and figure out how to do more. And the ability to potentially scale it through a group like the U.S. Chamber is really, really exciting for CAPS Nation.
If I could just build on that real quick. So, we're trying to create a very flexible infrastructure and really empower the local players to determine how they want to use it. And we expect there's going to be some traditional approaches like, let's create challenges for high school students. Let's create challenges for community college students. And that's all fine and good, but one thing that we talked about in the paper that Corey's referencing and that I hope we can start experimenting around is, how do you build more cross-functional teams? Because when you go to a workplace, you're probably not going to be with a team that's all exactly the same age, or that you've known for a long time. And not every problem is going to be domain specific, like it's a math problem. It's going to be interdisciplinary, you're going to be working with folks from different backgrounds, from all walks of life. So how do you start reflecting that through these simulated challenge experiences? I think it would be great to partner community college students with high school students, with university students to create a cross-functional team, or accessing other community institutions to really put together as diverse as possible team to solve a problem. How that fits into the curriculum, that's up for debate. But the infrastructure that we're trying to build should be able to accommodate even experimentation in that space. And I think the more you get students to those experiences, the better prepared they're going to be, and their expectations will be appropriately set to manage an effective transition into the workforce.
Wonderful. So we're running out of time, so I'm going to look at this final closing question is, if you had one piece of advice to give to practitioners, to workplaces about creating a work-based learning program, what would it be? What's your one words of wisdom? What's one thing that they could do to start today?
So I'll start, and we'll run back to you to close us out. So I would say, go where students lead. If you stay true to that, you're in really good shape. But the other thing I would say is leverage the ecosystem, okay? We have two people in the audience right now from America Succeeds, Tim and Stephanie, raise your hands. Find them if you want more information on durable skills. Courtney Riley is a great example of an entrepreneur doing great work around career awareness and skill sets. She's in the back, she's moderating the next session. You should get to know her. Mike Flanagan, we mentioned earlier competency-based education and transcripting. He's with Mastery Transcript Consortium. There are great people out there, and we're all moving the same direction, and we're trying to completely tip this system. So leverage the ecosystem.
And I would say, look, quality work-based learning is not easy, right? So let's not expect it's going to be. But there are resources out there, intermediaries that are out there to help you get it right. And don't stop and worry about getting it right before you get started, right? So connect with those resources, but I will tell you, intermediaries, whether it's GPS Education Partners or others, are there to help support you in this journey. And it is a journey, right? In developing quality systems, quality connections, and a whole ecosystem of stakeholders that are going to make this successful for students and successful for the community. We have some things that we'll give you, I think, on the way out that has our white paper on developing work-based learning ecosystems. There's a little bit of a how-to. There's also a phone number and everything in there. We would love to help connect you and help connect with you to take you through this journey.
I'll make 2 quick points. The first one being, when approaching employers around work-based learning, don't come hat in hand looking for charity. Approach them as a service. You're there, you can solve a problem. This is a tool that can help solve their problem. It's going to change the conversation. And then secondly, you got to do some experimentation, and you have to start with something manageable, but be thinking about scale on the front end, not the back end. There's a lot of boutique solutions you can make, but if work-based learning needs to be more ubiquitous and more an asset in more learners' lives, we have to be thinking about scale on the front end, not the back end. So make no plans small.
Excellent. Well, with that, I will thank Jason, Stephanie, and Corey for joining us today. I encourage you to walk around the corner to the next skills panel with some of the individuals that Corey pointed out. Appreciate your time. If you want more information, you can reach out to us at aasa.org. And thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.